Welcome to Community Chats, bringing you stories and insights from the heart of Community Living Toronto, a nonprofit organization that proudly supports people with intellectual disabilities and their families. We will focus on stories of belonging and inclusion and topics of interest from communities across Ontario and the world. From uplifting moments to breaking barriers, from innovative policies to ideas from leading thinkers, we continue to advocate for inclusive communities and support the rights and choices of people with an intellectual disability.
I'm Brad Saunders. I'm the CEO at Community Living Toronto, and welcome to our Community Chats podcast. These podcasts are an opportunity to share and learn and understand from each other better. These podcasts are released on the 15th and the 30th of each month, so please listen, like, and give us your feedback. These are one of the ways that we want to stay connected with our community, and we really value your feedback. Today, I'm talking with Agnes Samler. She brings a wealth of experience and knowledge gained through many years of public service, both with the Ontario Public Service, Community Living Toronto, as well as setting up the Office of the Child Advocate as an independent office, as well through her many volunteer activities. Agnes and I talk about her work with CLTO, the importance of parent advocacy, how to engage politicians, the ministry's new policy document, Journey to Belonging, and her late husband, Sam, and his legacy. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we did.
Agnes, welcome. You had a bit of an introduction there, and you are someone that needs no introduction because you're well known to our Community Living Toronto family. You've been a leader and a friend and a supporter and an advocate. And you were also generous enough to share your story with our 75th anniversary celebration. So thank you for doing that. So we wanted to spend a few minutes sort of chatting a little bit more and maybe getting to know you and your story in a way that we maybe haven't done before. So thank you for taking the time this morning.
I think probably one of the most important things for me is being part of a large extended family. We celebrate new babies, weddings, graduations, almost everything, funerals even, and we help each other all of the time. So that takes a lot of my time, but it brings me a great deal of joy, and it kind of grounds you because you have the feeling this is your family and this is where you belong. I'm also a volunteer with Defence for Children International Canada. We became a section of this international worldwide group in 1989. And I've been part of the group since that time, with being president for the last about 20 years. We have two jobs to do. One is to act as an advocate for children, and we've done that all the way up to the Supreme Court in a number of cases. And we also are tasked with educating people about the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So we've done that through some lectures, including one that was a joint lecture with Community Living Toronto. So those have been two important things. And at the end of last year, the end of COVID, really, we had lost a number of our board members. So some of them through health issues, some because their families needed them for other kinds of issues. And it seemed a really good time to step down. And so we have a new president in Erwin Ellman, who used to be the child advocate for the province of Ontario, and has taken on the job of president. And I will continue as past president. And the rest of the time, cross-country ski, swim, do some kayaking. And once in a while, I try and do something that really challenges me, can make me a little frightened. Zip lining in Costa Rica and things like parasailing in Mexico. So I just try and choose something that's going to shake me up a little. That's a little
excellent. So parasailing. I did that once with my daughter, and I felt strongly I never needed to do that again. Probably didn't need to do it the first time, but was it a good experience for you?
For me, once I was up there, like I was, the instructions were in Spanish. So
Okay.
they're hooking you up and talking to you in Spanish and then think, what? And they're doing this, they do. So, but once I got up there, it was amazing. Like to be, the birds were flying beneath you. Like it was just
Yeah.
the interesting experience. And I suppose I don't think I felt they were quite good at signals and stuff because you have to tilt the umbrella thing to let
Yeah.
air out so you can get back down. But no, I would do it again.
Excellent.
You
Well,
wouldn't do
you're
it
braver than
again.
I am. Now you also mentioned Irwin taking your filling your shoes, coming in after you at DCI. And I know that's a movement that's been very close to your heart for a long time. Now Irwin, you also have another connection with him in that although Irwin was the first child advocate in the province of Ontario, you were the person that moved the advocacy office from the ministry, where it was accountable to a deputy minister, into an independent branch of the legislature. Any memories from that or anything that jumped out? That was a pretty significant role. Now I know that that office was rolled into I guess the
Ombudsman. Ombudsman.
the ombudsman's office. So it's not a separate office anymore. But any reflections on that or how Ontario does in this area around supporting and advocating for children?
I would say when there was an office within government and DCI Canada worked for, I'm going to say about 6 or 7 years, going to talk to MPs and so on, and explaining why this has to be separate from government and how it has to be an independent office. So finally, we got the legislation and went through it. And then they discovered that there was a process they needed to go through using all of the different parties coming together to choose the advocate. And they had no one in place while that was going on. So they asked if I would be the first advocate, not the final one chosen by the parties, but and that went on for about 6 to 8 months. It was an excellent experience. Do I think it was right to roll it over to the ombudsman? Absolutely not. I believe that children deserve advocacy of their own, and it's quite different. And the ombudsman, this is not to be negative about their job, but the kinds of things, if you go back and take a look at how much of the time of the ombudsman has been given to children's issues, it's very small. There's just so
That's
much.
that's a great point. We used to, at Community Living Toronto, have several touch points throughout the year with the child advocate. You knew who the staff were, there were issues that they were tackling, both sort of the individual cases and situations, but also the bigger systems issues that they were dealing with around adoption and around children with complex special needs. Since the migration to the ombudsman, those touch points and those initiatives have not been prominent. So I do think I would agree. I do think we lost something in this province for our children. Now you have been connected with Community Living Toronto, both professionally and through sort of volunteering since you've retired. I'll say retired, although you're still pretty active. Give us your thoughts of Community Living Toronto, or what sort of has stood out to you over the years of your involvement with us?
Well, I guess I've had a really long involvement with Community Living Toronto. So I'll just go back briefly to when I was in government. And I always thought Community Living was an amazing organization. And that's from a government viewpoint. That a group of families, parents could get together and grow this organization into the quality, to the size that it was by the time I was meeting with people in government. So that was, so even in government, I really had an admiration for Community Living Toronto. And then I was asked if I would be interested in providing leadership to community living, and it took me not very long, but I thought it was a good fit, and the board thought it was a good fit too. So then I became the executive director. And that's really when I began to understand what it meant, the community living organization. And it came from parents like Kay and Jim Shedden and Donna Britton, and your last fireside chat, Laura Parsonson. And these are people who would say over and over, we're just regular people, we're regular parents. But I can tell you, if the issue was around the needs of their children, they were fierce advocates and really moved things so that their children could receive services that they needed. So I guess in my time inside, well, the other thing is self-advocates. Like they were so courageous and brave, and actually they knew really how to get ideas across. I mean, I learned how to understand people who didn't use language as a way to communicate. So, for example, I was at Shadow Lake one day with Susan Biani, her daughter, Rebecca. And Susan went to get some food, and Rebecca clearly was upset. There was something going on. And I thought I should get someone to get Susan. And then I thought, why don't I just try and deal directly with Rebecca? And just by paying attention, I noticed that the sun had moved and was on the side of her face. And so I moved, we were in the shade of a tree. So I moved her back into the shade, and she rewarded me with one of her marvelous smiles. It was just like, so she was able to, if you paid attention, if you listened, and that was an amazing lesson for me to learn, is that if you, that you can really understand people who don't have the same words that you normally use. So that was an important thing. The two things where I thought that I think have been important for community living, one started certainly in my time, but is underway still, is moving from programs to person-centered. And when I became part of community living, there were excellent programs, well-run, quality, but there was a program. And then if you were a parent or someone wanting to join the program, you applied. And if you fit the criteria of the program, you were accepted. And if you didn't, then that program wasn't for you. And now, and even in the time, we moved a long way to person-centered, and now I see that even more, is that people are saying, what is it you need and want? And then how do we actually make that happen? And it could be with a program, but more often it seems to be really identifying what the person really wants and needs, and then making that happen. And that's an amazing, and I know that's going on still very much now today. And the second thing is the strength of people with disabilities. It used to be you were seen as a receiver of service, someone who, had disabilities and needed to be helped and needed to be supported. And more and more, I have seen people, self-advocates, right, speak for themselves, talk about how important their views were, connect with the board and be part of that, actually be really strong and powerful in their movement forward. And even just listening to the influencers, right? So it's not only self-advocates, it's now influencers of other people. And what a powerful message. It's great.
Excellent. You talked about moving away from programs into supports and services that are more suited and designed by the individual who's receiving the support and service. Joe and his team are going to do an update. We've been on that journey moving away from larger congregate settings into more individualized, smaller, personalized support. It is a journey, and there's there's road bumps and different changes that come along with that. But we're committed to responding to that need. So I'm glad you mentioned that. You mentioned a few names of, I think you mentioned Kay Shedden and Donna Britton and Jim Turner, three people that are no longer with us, and then others, Laura, and a large group of parents in community living that are still actively involved in parenting. With, thinking of Jim and Kay and Donna and others, what was something that stood out to you during your career as sort of the magic that went with people in those parents advocating on behalf of their children? What kept them going? What did you see as, what did you take from that group? Any reflections that you would share with us?
Well, one of the things, that concept, I'm just a housewife or I'm just a parent. And I remember Kay Shedden talking about going to a meeting where the minister was present. And she said, I was shaking in my boots. But I went up to the minister and said, there are no services for my son. He has really significant needs and there are no. And the minister said, no, there's services for people with disabilities. And she said, no. And he said, okay, I want to hear more about this. So that was the one of the things I think they had, and I heard Laura talk about it at the last fireside chat, is that willingness to risk, to go out, to do something that was beyond the ordinary, to challenge people, even people in power, and to ask for what you need in a way that was respectful, I would say, but also determined. And I'm sure there are parents doing that again today. Like the ones I knew were the ones I mentioned, but I'm sure there are parents willing to do that. And it's also learning from each other and combining. So you don't have to go alone for something, that you can be part of a group and you can talk to each other, help each other, say, okay, how are we going to get 5% more for the service system?
Yeah.
How are we going to do that? And then actually getting together and saying, here's some strategies we think will work. So it's that kind of willingness to risk and also to spend the time working it out, sorting it out.
Those kinds of personal connections that people make who have lived experience and are going through something and sharing it with friends and family, community, and political leaders as well does go a long way. You probably heard that John Baird joined our Patrons Council over the summer. And as we were talking about, what his interest was, and that I met him, and he talked about memories of people from 20 years ago. And here's a successful politician who's been the Minister of Foreign Affairs and been all around the world, but still remembers meeting for a coffee in someone's living room in Scarborough 25 years ago, and the impact that had. So it can't be underestimated. A phrase that became popular over the weekend, so don't take this the wrong way, but is twofer. Agnes, you were a bit of a twofer, and twofer meaning 2 for 1. So when you joined the organization, your husband Ken also became very involved in the work that we do. Can you talk a bit about Ken and also the award that you've set up in his honor?
Well, first of all, and I'm sure you know this, whenever you go to conferences, the meetings and so on, your time is pretty well taken up, right? With like you're speaking and people are approaching you and so on. And so Sam always accompanied me, but he would spend his time with the self-advocates mostly, getting into trouble sometimes, but they really got along well. And as most of you know, Sam passed away when I was still the executive director here. And the self-advocates decided that there should be an award in his name. So they asked the organization, can we have Sam Samler Award as a volunteer, a self-advocate volunteer award. And that was amazing. Like, I know that's something that he would have really enjoyed and loved. And it was also, he also had a large pool table that ended up in one of the workshops, but just things. And I brought in some clothes for people, like jackets that they might have admired, or shirts. And one of the things that people did that was so supportive is they would come bouncing into my office saying, I've got Sam's shirt on today, or I've got Sam's jacket on today. And
Nice.
it didn't make me feel sad, because it was their joy and it was part of my joy. And I was so pleased that the organization agreed to the request to have an award in his name. It's still there, right? So
Continues today. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that's something he would have really enjoyed.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing him with us for all those years and allowing us to carry on his memory. I know it's one of the nicest awards that we do every year at our Leaders of Philanthropy. So thank you for that. Final question as we wrap up. The theme of our 75th anniversary was belonging, and the importance of belonging in different ways. What does belonging mean to you?
Well, I read the government report, by the way. Thank you for sending that over to me.
The journey to belonging report.
The journey to belonging, right? And it's two things struck me. One is how far the government has come from, well, did you spend your money well, and did you turn in all the documents you were supposed to turn in? So they have really moved a long way from that. And I think that is something that people with disabilities and their families and the organization should take pride in. There's still some way to go, but that's, and partly it's really understanding that fulfilling the dreams that are part of that report in some way are going to need resources that are not in the system now. So, but belonging, I guess I circle back to family. Like I feel like when you talk about belonging, it's a little like being a family. It's sort of having people around you, a feeling that I have a right to be here. There are people who care about me around me. I have a contribution to make. So it's a pretty good description for me of what belonging means. It's hard. Most of the places I've worked, I have felt like I've been in a family, and particularly community living like that.
Yeah.
People there just treated you like family and expected you to treat them back as family. So I suppose belonging, that's the easiest way for me to describe it.
Great. Thank you. When we talked about this a couple of days ago, when we were getting ready for this, you mentioned about how far government had come in their journey to belonging from where it was. And I find when you're in the weeds every day, it's easy to become a little cynical and zoom in too close and that. But I thought about that after we talked, and there has been a lot of change and progression and move in a good direction around personalized supports and belonging and having that, rights of citizenship. We've made progress, and you were a big part of that for many years. So thank you for taking the time today, and thanks for all your dedication and work and service over the years.
Well, and thank you, Brad. One of the things you've done is allowed DCI to have an office in 20 Spadina and to have use of the boardroom. And you know what that means for me is that I'm in 20 Spadina. I can meet the old, everybody I knew, or get introduced to the new ones. And it's been, so that gift was really appreciated.
Great. Glad to have you and glad to support the work.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Agnes has been a leader, friend, and advocate, and is a legend in the sector. I've had the privilege of working with Agnes for many years, and I've learned a lot from her and her approach to the work that she does. As we look towards the future of our sector and the supports that are needed, I think it's helpful to be reminded of where we've come from to get a sense of the progress that we've made along the way.
Don't forget to join us next time as we unpack the power of community through collaborative initiatives and shared experiences. Available on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Audible, and YouTube. Follow us on social media at CL Toronto. Let's chat, share, and spread those good vibes together. We hope these discussions will inspire you and give new ideas to add your voice to our mission of making our communities and neighborhoods inclusive and welcoming.